The ambassador's glowing form pulsed with soft colors as it spoke. The precursors tried to warn us all those millions of years ago. They knew what your species was and what you would become, not conquerors who want to rule everyone, not destroyers who want to burn everything, but protectors so fierce that nothing in the universe would dare threaten what you love. That night, Earth's first alien embassy building glowed with lights from a dozen different worlds. It was a beautiful sight that represented hope for the future. Captain Blake sat in his small apartment and looked up at the stars through his window. Carl Hayes, his old lieutenant, sat in the chair next to him. They shared a comfortable silence, the kind that only exists between people who have survived something terrible together. "Do you think they will come back?" Carl finally asked, breaking the quiet. The Kethraks, or maybe someone like them who did not hear the warning. Blake thought about the question for a moment, taking a sip of his coffee. Maybe, probably, actually. The galaxy is a very big place. There are always going to be bullies who think they can take what they want from others. And if they do come? Blake smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had tasted victory and knew how to win. Then we will teach them the same lesson we taught the Kethraks. We will show them why the precursors left that warning 3 million years ago. We will show them exactly what happens when you make the mistake of provoking humanity. In the years that followed, humanity spread out to the stars, but they did not go as conquerors trying to build an empire. They went as explorers and traders and teachers. They brought their technology to share with others. They brought their art and music and stories. They brought their stubborn insistence that every intelligent being in the universe deserved dignity and freedom and respect. They made strong alliances with peaceful species who wanted to cooperate, and they stood firm as a wall against aggressive species who tried to take advantage of others. Throughout the galaxy, a new saying began to emerge. It was whispered in bars and markets on hundreds of worlds. It was taught to young diplomats and military officers as an important lesson. The saying went like this: "If you must fight, be honorable about it. If you must conquer, be just and fair. But whatever you do, whatever bargains you make, whatever risks you take, never ever provoke the humans." The universe tried to warn us about them. Some of us were smart enough to learn the lesson. The Kethraks were not. The warning had been given 3 million years ago by the precursors, a species so advanced they had moved beyond physical form and transcended into something else entirely. They had looked at humanity when humans were still primitive and living in caves. They had seen what humanity would eventually become. They had seen the potential, both beautiful and terrifying. The precursors had not seen humanity as a threat that needed to be eliminated before it could grow strong. They had seen humanity as a force of nature that needed to be respected and left alone to find its own path. The precursors had tried to tell the rest of the galaxy a simple message. Leave the humans alone. Let them find their own way forward. Do not try to cage them or control them. Do not threaten what they love. Because if you do, they will show you what it means to fight a species that refuses to surrender. The Kethraks had ignored that warning. They had thought they were above such primitive concerns. They had thought their technology and their power made them invincible. They had seen humanity as weak and divided and easy to conquer. They had learned the truth far too late, and they would never make that mistake again. Neither would anyone else who valued their survival. 5 years after first contact, Captain Blake stood at the memorial on Luna with Amy Chen beside him. They came here every year on the anniversary to remember the fallen. 40,000 names were carved into the black stone wall. 40,000 people who had given everything. Do you think they knew? Amy asked quietly, looking at the names. Do you think they knew that their sacrifice would change everything? Blake shook his head slowly. I do not think they were thinking about changing the galaxy. I think they were just thinking about protecting their families, their friends, their home. That is what makes it meaningful. They did not die for some grand purpose or destiny. They died because they loved something enough to fight for it. Amy nodded, understanding. She reached out and touched one of the names on the wall, a friend she had lost during the battle. We did not ask to be warriors. We did not ask to be the scary ones. No, Blake agreed, but that is what we are now. And maybe that is okay. Maybe the galaxy needed someone who would stand up to the bullies, someone who would say no when everyone else was too afraid. Back on Earth, in the Coalition headquarters, Secretary General Lisa Grant was in a meeting with ambassadors from a dozen different species. They were discussing trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. It was boring but important work. the kind that built lasting peace between civilizations. During a break, one of the ambassadors, a insect-like being from the Tresk hives, approached Lisa privately. "I have a question, if I may," the Tresk said through its translator. "Of course," Lisa replied. "Your species has become known across the galaxy for your military capabilities, for your fierceness in battle. But sitting here with you now, working on these trade agreements, I see something different. I see a species that wants peace. How do you balance these two sides of your nature?" Lisa thought carefully about her answer. "We are not warriors by choice. We are warriors by necessity. Throughout our history, we have had to fight to survive. Against nature, against disease, against each other. Fighting is something we learned because we had to, not because we wanted to. But what we want, what we have always wanted, is to build things, to create, to explore, to learn, to connect with others. The fighting is just what we do when someone tries to take those things away from us." The Tresk ambassador's antennae twitched, and what Lisa had learned was a sign of understanding. "So you fight to protect the peace, not to glorify war." "Exactly," Lisa said. "We will always prefer to solve problems with words instead of weapons. But we will never hesitate to fight if fighting is the only option left." 10 years after first contact, humanity had established colonies on 6 new worlds outside their solar system. They had trade partnerships with 30 different species. They had cultural exchange programs, scientific collaborations, and joint exploration missions. Earth had truly become part of the galactic community, but there were still threats out there. Still species that did not understand or did not care about the warnings. Still bullies who thought they could push others around. And every time one of these aggressive species made the mistake of threatening humanity or their allies, they learned the same lesson the Kethrax had learned. They learned that humans kept their word. When humans said they would defend something, they meant it with every fiber of their being. When humans promised protection to an ally, that promise was kept no matter the cost. The age of humanity had begun not with a whisper, but with a roar that echoed across the stars. It had begun with blood and sacrifice and desperate courage in the face of impossible odds. It had begun with 40,000 people giving everything to protect what they loved, and the galaxy would never be the same because of it. The precursors had been right all along. Humanity was not a threat to be eliminated. They were a force of nature to be respected. A species that could be the kindest friend or the cruelest enemy depending entirely on how you treated them. The universe had tried to warn the galaxy about humanity 3 million years ago. Some had listened. The Kethrax had not, and now everyone knew the price of that mistake. 3 months passed after the Battle of Luna. During that time, the story of what happened spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The news was carried by traders moving between star systems. Diplomats whispered about it in the corridors of power on 1,000 different worlds. Everyone was talking about the same thing. The Kethrax Empire, which had ruled for 12,000 years, had been stopped. Stopped completely by a species barely a century into space travel. Stopped by a species so young they still fought wars among themselves. Stopped by humans. In the Grand Archive on Telmora Prime, the oldest library in the known galaxy, scholars went back to study the precursor warnings again. This time they read them much more carefully. This time they finally understood the truth. The precursors had not been warning others to protect humanity. They had been warning others to protect themselves from humanity. Other alien species across the galaxy began to study Earth with new and urgent interest. They analyzed human history going back thousands of years. They studied human culture, human art, human music. They examined human biology and psychology. What they found in their research made them very afraid. Humans were persistence predators. On their homeworld, they had hunted prey by chasing them for hours and hours until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Humans were pack hunters who worked together in groups. They had evolved in one of the most hostile environments ever documented in the galaxy. Their planet was full of diseases, dangerous predators, and natural disasters. They had survived ice ages that covered half their world in frozen death. They had survived supervolcanoes that blocked out the sun. They had survived plagues that killed half their population at once. And every single time something terrible happened, they adapted, they survived, and they came back even stronger than before. But there was something else about humans that was even more important, something that made them truly dangerous. Humans bonded with things. They bonded with their families and their friends. They bonded with their tribes and nations. They even bonded with abstract concepts like freedom and justice and home, and when something or someone threatened what they had bonded to, they would burn down the entire universe to protect it. There was no limit to what they would sacrifice. There was no price too high to pay. On Earth, humanity began the long process of rebuilding. The casualties from the war were mourned properly. Memorial walls were built on the moon, listing every single name of every person who had died defending their world. There were 40,000 names carved into that black stone. 40,000 people who had given everything so that humanity could survive. The generation ship Hope was repaired and given a new name. They called it Defiance because that was what humanity had shown the galaxy. Captain John Blake retired from active military service after the war. He was offered medals and promotions, but he turned them all down. Instead, he took a teaching position at the new Coalition Naval Academy. On the first day of class, he stood in front of a room full of young cadets. These were young men and women who had volunteered to join the military to defend Earth against whatever might come next. "You all know the story of what happened," Blake began. He looked at each young face in turn. "You know about the Battle of Luna. You know about the Kethrax. But I am here to teach you something more important than tactics or weapons or how to fly a ship. I am here to teach you what it means to be human in a galaxy that does not understand us yet." He paused and took a breath before continuing. "We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the smartest or the most advanced. We do not have the best technology or the biggest ships, but we have something that makes us dangerous to anyone who threatens us. We have something that makes entire civilizations shake with fear when they hear our name. We have each other. We have the ability to look at impossible odds and say, 'Watch me.' We have the stubborn, foolish, beautiful refusal to ever give up on what we love." Commander Amy Chen, now an instructor at the academy, continued the lesson after Blake finished. "The galaxy thought we were weak because we fight among ourselves. They saw our wars and our conflicts and they thought that made us divided. They did not understand that we fight each other because we care deeply about things that are worth fighting for. And now they know the truth. If we will fight each other over ideas and borders and beliefs, imagine what we will do to outsiders who threaten our entire species." The cadets listened carefully, absorbing every word. This was the lesson that would define humanity's role in the galaxy for generations to come. They were learning not just how to fight, but why humans fought the way they did. Far away from Earth, in the very heart of the Kethrax Empire, the surviving commanders made their official report to the Imperial Council. They told the complete truth about what had happened at Earth. They explained how a primitive species had destroyed their fleet. They showed recordings of the battle. The council watched in silence. After much debate, the Empire made a quiet decision. Earth would be left alone, not just for now, but forever. The harvest rights were officially revoked and erased from all records. The human solar system was marked with a warning beacon that would broadcast to any ship that came near. The message was simple and clear. Dangerous species. Do not engage. Do not provoke. Stay away. But the message about humanity spread much further than just the Kethrax Empire. Other empires and species received the information through their own intelligence networks. They all had to make their own decisions about how to handle this new species that had appeared on the galactic stage. Some saw humanity as a challenge to be overcome, but most saw the warning as wisdom to be heeded. The Velkari Consortium was the first to make official peaceful contact with Earth. They were a trading collective made up of dozens of peaceful species. They came to Earth with open hands and gifts instead of weapons and threats. They understood what the Kethrax had learned too late. Humanity could be either the best friend or the worst enemy in the galaxy. And the choice of which one you got was entirely up to you and how you treated them. Director Lisa Grant had been promoted to Secretary General of the United Earth Coalition. She stood at the landing pad in Geneva on the day the first official alien embassy was established on Earth. It was a historic moment. The Velkari ambassador approached her slowly. The ambassador was a being made of flowing light and sound, something beautiful and entirely alien. "We come in peace," the ambassador said through its translation device. The words were simple but sincere. "We have heard of your battle with the Kethrax. We have studied what happened. We honor your courage and your strength," Lisa smiled. It was the smile of someone who had seen both the very worst and the very best that humanity could be. "We prefer peace," she said honestly. "We would much rather build things than fight wars. We would rather explore and learn than destroy. But if someone forces our hand and threatens what we love, she let the sentence hang in the air unfinished. The implication was crystal clear. The galaxy understands now, the ambassador replied. Nearly 40,000 people had died defending their home. The human fleet was reduced to broken pieces barely holding together. The generation ships Unity and Horizon had been destroyed in their final kamikaze attack. Hope had survived, but it was badly damaged and tumbling slowly in orbit around the moon. But Earth was still there. Humanity had won. In the Coalition headquarters in Geneva, Director Lisa Grant looked at the damage reports with exhausted red eyes. She had not slept in 3 days. Her hand shook slightly as she held the data pad. "They are not leaving," she said to Admiral Carter, who stood beside her looking just as tired. "They are still out there, waiting, regrouping." "Then we hit them before they can recover," Carter replied immediately. His voice was hard and determined. "We do not have the resources for a long defensive war. Our only chance is to take the fight to them, attack them while they are still weak." "With what?" Lisa asked. She gestured at the reports. "Henry, we threw everything we had at them. We won by luck and by the skin of our teeth. How can we attack when we barely have any ships left?" Carter pulled up a star chart on the display. He pointed at the area beyond Jupiter where the surviving Kethrak ships were hiding. "Because we do not need a lot of ships. We need volunteers, and I can guarantee you right now, there are 10 million people on Earth ready to strap a bomb to their chest and fly into space if it means killing more of these things." He was absolutely right. The recruitment centers across Earth were overwhelmed with volunteers. People who had watched the battle on their screens. People who had lost friends and family in the orbital stations. People who simply understood that if humanity did not end this threat now, the Kethraks would come back with more ships and more weapons. Captain John Blake found himself reassigned from the crippled Liberty Station to a new mission. His new command was a fast attack corvette called Revenge. The name seemed appropriate. His crew was made up of survivors from a dozen different ships, all of them looking for payback. Lieutenant Carl Hayes had survived the battle, though he had lost an arm in an explosion. The doctors wanted him to take medical leave, but he refused. He was back at his station with a prosthetic arm, ready to fight again. Lieutenant Amy Chen, now promoted to commander for her brave actions during the battle, joined them as tactical officer. Together with 50 other small, fast ships, they formed humanity's strike force. "Our mission is simple," Admiral Carter explained in the briefing. Everyone was watching him on their screens. "The Kethraks have regrouped beyond Jupiter. They are licking their wounds. They think they have time to wait to recover. We are going to show them that humanity does not give you time to recover. We are going to hunt them down and kill every last one of them." Commander Greg Lawson, who was leading a sister ship named Fury, raised his hand to ask a question. "Sir, our intelligence reports say they are broadcasting messages back to their empire. They are calling for reinforcements." "Then we cut off that communication," Carter said grimly. His face was like stone. "We take out their command ship first. Without coordination, without orders from their commander, they are just targets floating in space waiting to be destroyed." The strike force launched from the moon 6 hours later. It looked like a swarm of angry hornets chasing after the giants who had kicked their nest. They used Jupiter's massive gravity to slingshot themselves into faster trajectories. They pushed their engines way beyond safe limits because safety was a luxury humanity could not afford anymore. Speed was more important than caution. The Kethraks detected them coming. Commander Veltheron, now aboard a replacement flagship called Eternal Dominion, watched the human ships approaching on his sensors. He could not believe what he was seeing. "They are attacking us. They should be hiding on their planet. They should be rebuilding their defenses. Why are they attacking?" Kirilleth had spent the last few hours studying human history. She had downloaded information from Earth's internet during their initial approach. "Because that is what they do," she said quietly. Her voice was filled with a kind of horrified respect. "Look at their history, Commander. Every single time they are pushed to the edge, they do not retreat. They do not hide. They attack. It is in their nature. The precursors knew this. That is why they left the warning." "We cannot run away," Veltheron said. He sounded desperate. "The Empire does not tolerate failure. If we flee without completing the harvest, we will be executed when we return home. If we stay here, these humans will kill us," Kirilleth replied simply. I would rather face punishment from the Empire than face whatever these humans have planned for us. The human strike force hit the Kethrax fleet like a wave of razors cutting through flesh. They did not try to fight fair or honorably. They targeted engines so the ships could not move. They targeted life support systems. They targeted communication arrays. Captain Blake led his wing of ships straight at the command ship, dodging through defensive fire that lit up the space around Jupiter like fireworks. "Amy, target their communication array," Blake ordered. His hands moved quickly over the controls. "I want them deaf and blind. Cut them off from each other." "Targeting now," Chen replied. Her fingers flew across her console with practiced skill. "Firing missiles." A spread of missiles curved through space toward the Eternal Dominion. The Kethrax point defense systems managed to destroy half of them, but the rest struck home. Explosions blossomed across the alien ship's hull. Suddenly, the alien fleet was cut off from each other. Each ship was fighting alone without any coordination. The battle turned into complete chaos. The Kethrax ships had been designed to use overwhelming force against weaker opponents. They could not adapt to human tactics. Every time they tried to form up into a defensive formation, the human ships would dart in close, strike hard, and then vanish into the interference from Jupiter's massive radiation belts. Commander Veltherin watched his fleet being torn apart piece by piece. He had never experienced anything like this in his entire life. His species had been the hunters for 12,000 years. Now for the first time they were the prey, and humans were very, very good hunters. "Abandon ship," Veltherin finally ordered. His voice was defeated. "All hands to escape pods. We have lost. It is over." But the humans were not taking prisoners. They were not showing mercy. The escape pods were tracked by sensors, targeted by weapons, and destroyed one by one. It was brutal and merciless and cold, but it was human. They were making sure that no Kethrax survived to bring back detailed information about human tactics and capabilities. When the last Kethrax ship went dark, its reactor breached by a final missile strike. The human strike force regrouped in the shadow of Jupiter's largest moon. They counted their losses. Out of 50 ships that had started the mission, only 32 remained. Again, victory had been paid for in blood and sacrifice. Message coming in from Admiral Carter, the communications officer, reported to Captain Blake. "He says to come home. We have done enough." Blake looked around at his crew. He saw the exhaustion in their faces. He saw the trauma in their eyes. He saw the hollow victory that did not feel like winning at all. They had killed the enemy, but they had lost friends and comrades doing it. "Set course for Earth," he ordered quietly. "Let us go home." As the human ships began their long journey back to Earth, the debris field around Jupiter slowly drifted in the giant planet's gravity. The wreckage of the Kethrax fleet floated there like a monument, a warning to anyone who might come looking. The battle was over. But the real message was just beginning to spread across the galaxy. The message ended with coordinates. Coordinates for Earth's moon, where humanity had gathered everything they had. Every warship, every defense platform, every armed vessel that could carry a weapon into space was waiting there. It was not much compared to the massive Kethrax fleet, but it was there. Humanity was ready to fight. Commander Veltherin watched the human transmission with amusement. He almost wanted to laugh. "Brave," he said to himself. "Very foolish, but brave. They actually think they can fight us." "Commander," Kirilleth said quietly from her station, "maybe we should think about this more carefully." "The precursor warning means nothing," Veltherin interrupted her sharply. "Prepare the fleet for attack. We will disable their primitive vessels easily. We will take what we came for, and we will leave this species so broken that they will never threaten anyone again. Sometimes young species need to learn lessons through pain." The Kethrax fleet moved into attack position. Their crystal hulls caught the light as they arranged themselves in a crescent shape. They were ready to sweep aside humanity's defense like brushing away insects. They had no idea what was really about to happen. The Kethrax attacked at dawn Earth time. Their energy weapons lit up the darkness of space like a second sun. Beams of pure power shot out. Weapons that could boil entire oceans and crack continents in half. The first attack hit the human defensive line hard. 3 cruisers simply stopped existing. They were vaporized in less than a second. Captain John Blake held onto his command chair tight, as Liberty Station shook from a blast that barely missed them. "All stations execute protocol defiant. Make them work for every single inch." The human fleet scattered like a school of fish when a shark attacks. They broke apart from the neat formation the Kethrax expected to see. Smaller ships darted between the massive alien vessels. They were too small and too fast for the alien weapons to target properly. The human ships fired kinetic rounds, railgun projectiles that moved at incredible speeds. The projectiles punched holes through the crystal hulls that had never been designed to take damage. Admiral Henry Carter watched from his command ship called Constellation. He was coordinating the chaos of battle. "They are too big," he said to his tactical officer, Commander Greg Lawson. "They think being big means they cannot lose." "Then let us teach them about physics," Lawson replied with a grim smile on his face. "Target the lead ship. Fire all antimatter torpedoes. Everything we have." 6 torpedoes launched, each one containing a gram of antimatter. The Kethrax tried to shoot them down with their point defense systems, but the weapons were too fast and moved in unpredictable patterns. 3 of the torpedoes hit their target. The lead Kethrax warship, called the Pride of Kelshaw, simply exploded. One moment it was there, a mountain of crystal floating in space. The next moment it was just an expanding ball of plasma and debris. The shockwave from the explosion caught 2 more alien ships nearby, sending them tumbling out of formation. Commander Veltheron stared at his display in complete shock. He could not believe what he was seeing. Impossible. Their weapons should not be able to get through our shields. "They are using matter and antimatter reactions," Kirilleth reported. Her voice was shaking with fear. "Commander, those weapons are very unstable. They are willing to use weapons that could destroy their own ships just to hurt us. On Earth, billions of people watch the battle on every available screen. In New York and Beijing and Lagos and Sao Paulo, people gathered in the streets. They looked up at the lights in the sky that showed humanity's desperate fight for survival. In a small apartment in Seattle, a woman named Kate Murphy held her daughter close to her. "Are we going to die, Mom?" the little girl asked. Kate thought about lying to make her daughter feel better, but instead she told the truth. "Maybe, sweetheart. Maybe we will. But if we do, we are going down fighting. That is what humans do. We never give up. Never." In orbit around the moon, the battle became brutal and close. The Kethrax had better weapons and shields, but they had never fought an enemy like this before. Humanity had learned about war in the hardest way possible, by fighting each other for thousands of years. Every tactic, every strategy, every dirty trick that humans had ever learned was being used against the aliens now. Lieutenant Amy Chen was now commanding the destroyer Valiant after her captain was killed in the first minutes of fighting. She led her ship into the shadow of a huge Kethrax cruiser. "Take us in close," she ordered her crew. "Right up against their hull." "Ma'am, that is suicide range," her helmsman said nervously. "Exactly," Amy replied. "They will not fire their big weapons when we are this close to their own ship. Load nuclear missiles. Set them for proximity detonation. We are going to carve them open from the inside." The Valiant pressed right against the alien hull like a tick on giant skin. Amy fired every missile her ship had. The nuclear explosions tore through the crystal structure. The Kethrax ship began to break apart. Massive sections broke off like pieces of an iceberg melting in the sun. But humanity was paying a terrible price for this fight. For every alien ship destroyed, 3 human vessels were lost. The number of dead climbed into the thousands, then tens of thousands. These were ships full of people who had volunteered to stand between Earth and total destruction. Captain Blake was coordinating the defense from Liberty Station when he saw another wave of Kethrax ships moving to attack from the side. "We cannot hold them," he said quietly to himself. "There are too many of them." Then something unexpected happened, something that changed everything. From the dark side of the moon, 3 massive ships appeared. The generation ships Unity, Hope, and Horizon. These were vessels built to carry humanity to other star systems. They were not warships. They had no weapons, but they were absolutely massive, and they had the most powerful engines humanity had ever built. Admiral Carter's voice came through the command channel to all the human ships. "Blake, get your people out of the way. We are going to show these crystal bastards what happens when you pick a fight with apes who learned how to move mountains." The generation ships, each one massing 100 million tons, began accelerating toward the Kethrax fleet. They were not going to fire weapons at the aliens. They were going to become the weapons themselves. Commander Veltheron finally understood. He finally realized what the precursors had tried to tell the galaxy all those millions of years ago. These humans, these primitive, violent, impossible humans, did not fight like civilized species were supposed to fight. They fought like cornered animals. They were willing to sacrifice everything, even themselves, for even the smallest chance of winning. Full retreat, Veltheron ordered. His voice was breaking with panic. All ships retreat to jump distance. Do it now, but it was already too late. The generation ships, powered by engines that could bend space itself, slammed into the Kethrax formation. They hit like the hammers of angry gods. The physics were simple and brutal. Objects in motion stay in motion. And when you had that much mass moving that fast, absolutely nothing could stop it. The Kethrax fleet shattered like glass hit by a sledgehammer. Ships that had existed for thousands of years broke apart in seconds. The crystal hulls, so beautiful and so strong against energy weapons, were nothing against pure kinetic force. The Battle of Luna lasted for 18 brutal hours of continuous fighting. When it finally ended, the space around the moon was filled with debris from both sides. Of the 47 Kethrax ships that had entered the solar system so confidently, 31 had been completely destroyed. The remaining 16 fled beyond Jupiter, trying to regroup and figure out what had just happened to them. But Earth had paid a heavy price written in blood. The Kethrax Empire had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. Their ships looked like giant pieces of glass floating through space. They were so powerful that they did not need planets anymore. They lived in huge stations that orbited stars and took energy directly from them. To the Kethrax, younger species were nothing special. Some were interesting to study. Others were just things to use. Commander Veltheron stood in his ship looking at a small blue planet on the screen. Earth, the locals called it. It was just another world in a quiet corner of space. Nothing important about it at all. But there was one strange thing that made him curious. "Is the warning real?" Veltheron asked. His fingers, which looked like they were made of crystal, tapped on the control panel. His second officer, Kira Leth, nodded her head. "Yes, Commander. It was left by the precursors. We found it in the old archives on Telmora Prime. The translation is very clear. It says to let the humans find their own way. Do not cage them. Do not threaten them. Do not take what they love," Veltheron laughed. The sound was like glass breaking. "The precursors disappeared 3 million years ago. What they said means nothing now. Look at this species. They have barely left their own moon. They fight each other over imaginary lines on maps. They kill each other over old beliefs and stories. But the warning says their name specifically," Kirilleth said. Her voice was worried. "No other species in the entire archive has such a clear warning." Then the precursors were stupid, Veltheron decided. He turned away from the screen. "Start the harvest. Their genetic material will sell for good money in the core markets. And their planet has enough water to supply our farms for 100 years. The orders went out to the fleet. 47 warships, each one the size of a small city, began moving toward Earth. The Kethrax had done this same thing on hundreds of other worlds. It was easy. It was routine. Nothing ever went wrong. On Earth, the year was 2157. Humans had built colonies on Mars and Europa. They had started building huge ships to travel to other stars. After the climate wars, all the nations had joined together under one government called the United Earth Coalition. The planet was finally starting to heal from all the damage. Captain John Blake sat in the command center of Liberty Station, an orbital defense platform. He watched the sensor readings and felt his stomach turn cold. The numbers on the screen did not make sense. "Get me Director Lisa Grant at Coalition Command," he said. His voice was calm, but inside he was scared. "Tell her we have unknown objects coming. Very big ones." Lieutenant Carl Hayes looked up from his station. "Captain, the computer says these things each weigh over 1 billion tons." "That cannot be right." "It is right," Blake said quietly. "We are not alone in the universe anymore. And whoever they are, they did not call us first to say hello." Down on Earth, in the Coalition headquarters in Geneva, Director Grant got the message. Within 15 minutes, every military base on Earth and in space was ready for trouble. The big generation ships near the moon started moving civilians to safety. The Mars colony went completely dark, hiding from whatever was coming. All of humanity held its breath as the Kethrax fleet entered the solar system. Their crystal hulls caught the sunlight and made rainbows. But those rainbows meant death was coming. 3 hours later, a message came. It played in English, Chinese, Spanish, and many other Earth languages. The voice was cold and had no feeling in it at all. "Primitive species of the third planet, You now belong to the Kethrax Empire. You will submit to harvest protocols. If you resist, we will destroy your world completely. You have 6 of your solar rotations to comply. 6 days. They had 6 days before the aliens would take everything from them. During those 6 days, humanity did not give up. They did not panic and run. They did something the Kethrax had never seen before. They got angry. The United Earth Coalition held an emergency meeting that lasted 17 hours. Leaders from every nation, every colony, every space station came to Geneva. The room was thick with tension. Everyone knew they might be facing the end of everything. Director Lisa Grant stood up to speak. Her silver hair was pulled back tight. Her face showed pure determination. She had lived through the climate wars. She had seen humanity at its worst and at its best. She was not going to let her species die without a fight. They gave us 6 days, she said. Her voice was strong and clear. 6 days to give up everything we are, everything we have built, everything we love. 6 days to become animals for an empire that sees us as nothing but things to use. She stopped, talking, and looked at everyone in the room. I say we give them an answer they will never forget, Admiral. Henry Carter stood up next. His old face showed years of military service. He had commanded fleets in many wars. He knew about fighting, and he knew what they were facing now. We do not have as many weapons as them, he said honestly. We do not have ships as big as theirs. Their smallest ship could probably destroy our entire defense grid, but we have things they do not know about. We have new engine technology from the Generation ship program. We have weapons they have never seen because we have been too busy fighting each other. He showed pictures of humanity's weapons, kinetic kill vehicles that could smash through anything, nuclear-pumped lasers, antimatter warheads that had been banned by treaty, but were kept hidden for emergencies just like this one. And we have something else, Carter continued. We have 4 billion people who just learned that everything they love is about to be taken away. That is 4 billion people with nothing left to lose. Captain Blake watched the meeting from his station. His crew gathered around him. Lieutenant Carl Hayes looked at the display showing where the Kethrax ships were positioned. They are not even defending themselves, Carl said. Look at how they are arranged. They are trying to look scary, not ready to fight. Because they have never needed to fight, Blake answered. The computer analyzed their messages. They have been doing this for thousands of years. They show up, they threaten, and every species they meet surrenders, every single time. We are not every species, said Lieutenant Amy Chen. She was young, only 25, but her eyes were hard as steel. Sir, I grew up in the reconstruction zones. I watched my parents rebuild our city brick by brick after the floods destroyed it. Nobody took that from us. Nobody gets to take Earth, Blake nodded slowly. Then let us show them what happens when you threaten a human's home. The Coalition sent their answer on the 5th day. Every screen on every Kethrax ship showed the same message at the same time. It was Lisa Grant's face, and behind her, Earth was turning peacefully in space. To the Kethrax Empire, she said, you have threatened our world. You have threatened our people. You gave us an ultimatum, submit or die. We have thought about your offer very carefully. Every nation, every colony, every settlement of humanity has reached the same decision. She leaned forward. Her smile was sharp and dangerous. Come and take it.